Hey, everybody. I'm Lisa Campion. Welcome back to the Miracle of Healing. Today, we have the honor of speaking to a true legend in the psychic world. And you guys know how much I love talking to other psychics. Today, we have Judith Turner, and she is a world renowned psychic, author, intuitive counselor who's been doing this work for quite a few many years. And man, me too, right? We both started in the 80s. So that was kind of crazy. But when I tell you her client list ranges from the rich and famous, I mean it. So she's been a celebrity psychic consultant on movie sets, A Beautiful Mind, Casino, Wall Street, The Witches of Eastwick. She's been consulting for television shows, including The Sopranos and All My Children. She's written best-selling books that have been in circulation forever and are still selling like crazy. Today, we're here to talk about her newest book, You Are Never Alone, Hugs from Heaven. It's a really beautiful collection of over 150 real-life stories about the signs and messages people have received from loved ones who have passed away. And, I think what makes this book so unique here is that Judith really offers her own insight into each story, so helping us readers understand the spiritual meaning behind these experiences. So I'm super, super happy to have you on the show today, Judith. Thanks for being here.
Nice to meet you. And thank you for the audience for listening, and we're going to have some fun.
Yeah. So I love to hear people's origin stories. How did you start your life as a psychic?
Well, I started not knowing I was a psychic, as probably you did. You just start to think like, why do I know that? How do I know a telephone number without anybody telling me? How do I know somebody was at the mall without telling me? Kind of knowing when somebody's going to get sick over the dinner table without them knowing that they're going to get cancer. Just little by little, I just knew things, and I thought everybody did until I started telling the truth and finding out that not everybody did. And they'd wonder where I got my information from. And that's a telltale sign. Another thing is, I don't know if this happened with you, but I have lie radar. Even if someone's telling the simplest lie, you're like, why are they lying about that? Why do I care that they went out with somebody else? Or why do I care that they were at their grandmother's? So you just like read them and be like, what? Why are they lying to me? And that is so revealing on finding that you have such strong intuition. And people say, I would say that's one of the smallest inklings of being like, being a psychic 101 or having the intuition that you can read. Besides like having dreams that come true or being able to self-predict like things for people and just wondering why you can do that and nobody else can. So
yeah, that's so cool.
Yeah. And back in 1978, it wasn't so popular. And I remember the first like television shows I was on, and CBS News did a story on me, is, does this exist? And now that the world has figured out it does exist, and everybody goes to somebody. Okay. Okay. Well, they go to a medium, or they go to a life coach, or they go to but intuitive counseling is so huge because people want quick answers and quick answers and real answers and great advice and great insight. Now, I think everybody's psychic ability could be a little different. I'm a very good visionary, so sometimes it's very easy for me to convey how somebody else is feeling in the situation. I'll be like, did you know he felt this way? And those are kinds of things that I think make me different than other people. Not everybody reads the same, and then getting people from the other side. And that's why in this book, You Are Never Alone, Hugs from Heaven, in my other two books, there's Judith's insight in the hidden world of birthdays and the hidden world of relationships. So I wanted to follow that thread. And in all these signs books of anything that's out there and anything I've read, there's no answers. People just tell their story. And in this book, you can see that I give a detailed story on their story and try to let people find their self in that story, even if it's a little different, but the same.
Yeah, that's so fascinating because I think, you know, one of the things that we really struggle with, is interpreting the information that we get, right? So we might have really intense signs and omens and things that are happening, but how do we know what it means? How do we interpret it? So your interpretation on what it means is super cool that you did that in your book.
Well, one of the things is, in shopping for an agent, I learned something from everybody, even the ones that didn't take me. Okay. And one of the things that some piece of advice somebody gave me along the way is, well, if it's not universal, it isn't anything. And I'm like, of course it's going to be universal, but it also has to be individual. So I
Mm,
made it both. I made every
mm.
answer not just an answer to that person, but maybe an answer for the person reading it or any person reading it. And
Yeah.
I love the name of your show because I really feel like that's what this book was really about, is
Mhm.
awakening people to being okay with believing in what they feel
Sort
and
of
not
giving them permission to really explore their, you know, their psychic experiences and their intuition, right?
exactly, and making it okay. A lot of times people like say, is this right? Is this wrong? And I'll be like, does it work for you? Good.
Mhm.
That's all that matters. If you believe that that cardinal that shows up on your doorstep every birthday out of nowhere is your mother, well, then that's the best news you can have for yourself. That is a birthday present. How could you make that happen? A script couldn't do that. Right? Like
Yeah.
something that happens repeatedly over and over again that lets you really feel. So I give people not only permission, but I also give them guidance in the fact that they can set themselves free from believing what somebody else believes. 7 out of 10 people believe in guardian angels. So there's a lot of us.
Yeah, and I think have had experiences with guardian angels, so not just believing it, but really, like, feel like they're getting direct messages or having direct experiences with guardian angels, and you chose Guardian Angel Day as the day for book release, right?
Yes, because I really want, like, we have so many holidays. Why can't we all get together and really make that Guardian Angel Day, October 2nd, really stand for something other than, it actually is a holiday in the Catholic Church. It became a holiday in 1608, but that wasn't when it started. That's when they actually anointed it a holiday. But every religion has their guardian angels. Some of them call them something else. Some people who aren't even religious call them guides, or they'll say winks or nods, or they believe it's their mother or father, and it doesn't necessarily relate to a church. But in Catholicism, it does, and it has its own day. So I was like, what's better than having it published on Guardian Angel Day? And I wish they would have Hallmark cards with Guardian Angel Day
Mm,
because it's so true. So I
yeah.
think, years ago I did Guardian Angel compacts for Estee Lauder long before I did the book. And that was, I want to say, it's like 20 years ago. So it's been popular for a long time, but I feel like the more and more we give permission for people to believe in what they feel, the more widespread it is. And just like when we became psychics back in the 70s and 80s, and it was a little taboo,
Yeah.
right? It was like, what are you doing? Who are you? What is that? And so I think that now this is the other side of that, is believing what we feel and what we're getting, and that it's really to guide us and help us and
I'm so
awaken
I'm
us.
so curious about how you ended up in media, on TV and in movies, working as a psychic. How did that come about?
I'm going to tell you something. I was back there, and I was reading in a pub, in a back corner of a pub. And this woman sat down next to me, and she said, I said, don't say anything because your car's out of gas. And if you don't go to a gas station, you're going to be in trouble. And she wasn't there actually for a session. She just happened to stop in and sit next to me. And she said, "Excuse me, that's why I'm here. I'm out of gas. And it's 12 o'clock at night and my car broke down." So, and then she said something to me and I said, "You're going on a movie." And she said, "If I was going on a movie," and I didn't know anything about her. I said, if I was going on a movie, I would know it. Because in my business, that a long time in advance. Well, she went home that night and she came looking back there for me and went all over town. The town was Edgewater, looking for me. And back then, Edgewater was a very little town and people knew exactly who I was. Now, you could probably go through hundreds of people before you, because it's like a little city. And she found me and she said, "How did you know that?" Because I got home and I got a call on my machine that I was going to be in a movie set. And she was a hair and makeup artist for the stars. And that's how she would bring me on sets and movie sets and TV shows. And it just kind of went through wildfire. And then other people. So to this day, I still read hair and makeup artists a lot. And they bring me on sets and producers would hire me. And, it's just funny. Yesterday, I was talking to somebody about being on Three Witches. They had asked me about Three Witches. They read that I was on Three Witches of Eastwick. And that was a really interesting movie. And they did put it in the paper. There was probably press about it back then. But because somebody brought up the fact that they just started talking about Bobby Hedges. And I said, "I met Bobby Hedges on Three Witches." And they're like, "What?" And, he was Epstein on Welcome Back, Kotter. So,
Wow.
yeah. And so it was an unbelievable set, an unbelievable place to be. I have to blow up some of the pictures I had from that. And it was my first introduction ever to Jack Nicholson. And that was interesting. So, but people, it's like an all-time favorite movie for a lot of people.
Yeah,
And
it's one of my favorites too, The Witches of Eastwick. What a great
yeah.
movie.
So,
Yeah.
and the set was unbelievable. And it was so interesting to be on there. I was on there for 3 days with them and read most of the cast, and people would bring me on. Producers would hire me to bring, work with the actors and actresses. And, some people get a massage and some people got a reading with Judith Turner. So that's how it all started for me.
That's so
And then
fun.
Search for Tomorrow brought me on, and then they were like, come on. And I told them there was going to be missing scripts, and then it became a big thing in Soap Opera Digest. So my story just kept going and going.
That's so cool. Yeah, I was working back then too as a psychic, but I was pretty low on the rate, like under the radar, word of mouth kind of only, and I just think it's fascinating that, especially during that time, because you're so right. Like when I first started, it was the 80s and it wasn't really cool. Like it was not wasn't something that, you really could talk about too much in public. So it's just fascinating to me that you were, people were talking about you and you were getting in the papers and getting media coverage. It's so cool.
Yes. And back then, like I was 21 years old, and my coming out party literally was being on CBS News.
Wow.
It's because I saved a drug dealer from getting arrested. And he came on and said how I saved his life, because I told them they were going to come and arrest him on February 12th. I think it was 1981 or something like that. And he lived in Haworth, New Jersey. And I said, February 12th, they're going to come. You better close, and he made sure there was nothing. And SWAT teams came through his house. And I hadn't heard from him in months. And all of a sudden he's like, you were right. So then CBS heard about it and and he came on TV with me and said he was no longer going to sell drugs.
Wow. That's such a story. I love that. What a cool story.
And I was like, so So I had to call my parents up because I lived in an apartment that was the size of a shoebox. And I said, "Ma, Dad, can they film at your house?" They're like, "For what?" I said, "By the way, I'm a psychic." And they're doing a story on me about this guy that I read, and my father was a cop, and he's like, "You did what?" He was like, "Okay, this too shall pass." So I'm still waiting for it to pass.
Yeah. All these many years later. I know, that's so funny. And well, I appreciate it, the work that you did, especially in the media, I think made it easier for the people now. You know what I mean? Like now,
Absolutely.
kind of plowed the road for the rest of us. So I'm just super, super grateful as somebody who's also been in that position, to help, you know, I guess there's still people that are like, is this real? But there's so many more psychics on TV now, and TikTok psychics, like it's so much more prevalent and common. People talk about it. And I think that's down to front runners like you.
Well, I'm going to tell you,
Yeah.
back when I started, there was a handful of us in the East Coast, and
Yep.
three of us still exist. I mean, there's
Yep.
other people, but three of us like that still were, and there were quite a few that passed. But Yolanda used to be in New York City, and Judy Goodman, and
I was
so
in Boston. I was in
yeah, you were
Boston.
in Boston,
So
but I'm just right. I didn't know, and back then you didn't, there wasn't communication like there is
no,
now. So you
that's
didn't
right.
know where other people were, So you probably have your handful of people that you knew in your world,
Hmm.
and yet it wasn't everyday noise. Now, do
Right.
you ever go on TikTok? There's like 30
Oh
million
my
of them.
God. TikTok psychics everywhere. Yeah. And a lot of them seem like they need a little more training, but
Yeah.
I appreciate their enthusiasm, and because they're bringing it to a whole new generation of people, a younger generation who just take it for granted that it's real, because to them, it's just part of the mainstream conversation now.
Yeah. Lisa, we need to write a book.
Yeah.
Coming out in the 80s, okay?
Absolutely. That'd be
It
so
was
fun.
easy. It was easier to get over. I mean, what do they say? The last racism is redheads. Well, the racism was also psychic ability. Okay.
Yeah.
People just really kind of were like, "You're what?" People didn't grow up saying, "I want to grow up and be a psychic," because it wasn't even a household word. Now it's a
I
household
had
word.
this moment like when I was like 12 years old, and I went to the movie Poltergeist when it came out. It was like, and there was this professional psychic, Zelda the psychic. And I remember thinking, because I was psychic since I was little, really childhood, had a lot, so childhood experience for me. And I remember sitting there thinking, oh my God, you can do that. Oh my God, you can be a professional psychic. That's what I'm going to do. And I wouldn't have thought of that unless I had seen that movie. And that's the time I made the decision. That's what I was going to do.
Well, you know what? That's awesome. That's awesome. I said,
Yeah.
I'm never doing this
Huh?
as a profession. And then no matter how much I didn't want to do it, it found me and people found me. And I was
Yeah.
like, okay, well, I guess this is what I'm supposed to be when I grow up.
Yeah. Kind of like fate, or it's really your life purpose, I think.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, you know what? When you go to a party and somebody says she's a psychic, the first thing they say is, "Tell me about me." So when I
Mm,
would go out, I wouldn't say I was a psychic. Okay.
right.
I would just say I still work at my parents' deli, because I didn't want people it to be a focal point, you
Right.
know,
You
you
don't want to
know,
be a party trick, right?
right. But at the same
Yeah.
time, I was very young. I mean, I remember being on the movie set of Wall Street with the Sheehan boys, and what and like the dynamics that went on. And I remember being, I heard, what's her name, Cameron Burr, the girl from Full House. Um, she just wrote a statement saying how she went to a party and it was like some sexual S&M party, and she laughed, and she was like so blown away, and people kept writing in the thing, she's a liar, she's a liar, she's a liar. Well, when I was 20, I was on the set of Search for Tomorrow and invited to a party where I walked in and everybody was cross-dressing, and I was like, where am I? What happened? So like your whole world changes, and you're in what there was like such a world out there that I knew nothing about growing up in, Palisade, New York, or Edgewater, New Jersey. And
Right.
so, being in the movie world, there was a lot. And I said, that girl's telling the truth, and the whole world thinks she's lying, because
Wow.
you could
That's
always walk into something and know nothing about it. And people were looking at me like I was something that was different.
Isn't that funny? And it's sort of like two, oddball worlds collide, right? Because there's the oddball world of Hollywood and, and movies and TV, and also how strange it is to be a psychic. And it sounds like that created a lot of extra storytelling opportunities for
Oh,
you,
wait, that could be 9 books. I was very lucky that I got to go to a lot of places, see a lot of things, and meet a lot of interesting people.
Yeah.
As a psychic, I went to England, and went on a set there, and that was also cool. So, I mean, that is the very fun part. And I, at some point, was like, this is the book I've had in my heart. You Are Never Alone, Hugs from Heaven,
Yeah.
my whole life, because I wanted to answer questions that people wouldn't talk about.
That's great.
And I wanted to give answers to questions that I'd want to know if I wasn't me.
Mhm.
Do you ever think that way with people?
Yeah. I mean, I often wish, people could experience the world the way that I do. And it's also challenging, you know what I mean? That it's not always the easiest gig in the world. But it certainly is fascinating. Do you have a story from one of your books that you can share, like something that was really meaningful for you?
From You Are Never Alone, Hugs from
Yeah.
Heaven.
Yeah.
One of the most meaningful story is the first story of the book. And that is, I was working on this book with a guy named Kevin Torin, who was a producer in Hollywood. And he was like, he goes, I know you're like 20 years. I didn't know you wrote books. And he wasn't a client. He was a family friend. And so he said, well, what do you want to do? And I said, I want to write this book. And he said, well, let me help you. He goes, this should be a podcast. This is amazing. Your idea is unbelievable. Let's do this. Start writing, put things down. Let's go on this. Like, what are you waiting for? He goes, you have me. You have the tunnel to Hollywood. Let's go. Let's create this. And in the middle of us putting together and me coming up with the name of the book, You Are Never Alone, Hugs from Heaven, I sent him 3 names. And he said to me, let's go with You Are Never Alone, Hugs from Heaven. 27 and a half hours later, he died, 44 years old.
Whoa.
Yes. So his mother, who's in the book, her name is Jan Torin. Between her and I, like, the stories are incredible. But she tells the story of how she lost her first son and her second son in the first story of the book, and the signs. So to me, the sign alone was the book.
Yeah.
Because here he was at the 11th step of the 11th hour of the last minute, giving me the name. And then next thing you know, everybody's receiving hugs from heaven from Kevin.
Wow.
So it's such a tie-in. And then I didn't even know the grief I was dealing with myself with this. And this is my awakening in this, was I had this book idea, and how I had the person who was encouraging me to do this, who was giving me the keys to the kingdom, and then took it away. was taken
Mm.
away. And probably if it wasn't for my son saying, you have a right to grieve too here, everybody lost a different piece of who that person was. And this was your
Yeah.
piece. And you will
Wow.
find your path in this. And I took the stories and I kept writing, and I just found my path. My first 2 books were published by Simon & Schuster. And this book, I decided to do and what's called I had it produced. I had to
Mhm.
produce it
Yep.
because I didn't want to wait. I wanted it out on Guardian Angel Day. And you know what's really funny? And this is where such an awakening was for me. My last book, The Hidden World of Relationship, also came out on October 2nd, but I didn't know it was Guardian Angel Day then.
Wow. That's beautiful.
Yes. And that book came out officially came out October 2nd, but the book shipped and the parties and everything were the week of September 11th.
Mm.
So both tied into so much spiritual journey and people coming, and you probably too dealt with so many people who were coming out of the woodworks trying to get in touch with their loved ones and the pain.
Yeah, I'm from Boston, you know what I mean? So a lot of people that died on those planes were from Boston.
Right.
We all knew somebody who was on one of those planes. Yeah. It was an intense time to be a psychic, as it always is, really.
Yeah. People say I say some days it's a gift, some days it's a curse. It's a lot of work. You have a lot.
Wow. It is a lot of work. That's amazing. Well, Judith, how can people reach you? Are you still doing readings, or are you just writing these days?
I still do readings. I still do.
Yeah.
Yes, I still
Cool.
do.
And
yes.
If somebody wanted a reading with you or read your book, how would they reach you?
Well, they could go on my website, or my office is in Edgewater, New Jersey. Okay. Mm-hmm. So if they remember my name, Judith Turner, in Google, they'll get Edgewater, New Jersey. And the number is 201-224-6629. I have very nice secretaries there that work. My email on my website is judith-turner.com.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of simple. If you remember my name, you remember my website. And and the book, You Are Never Alone, is the new book. And The Hidden World of Birthdays and The Hidden World of Relationships are the old books. But they're still out. They're still on the shelf, and you can still get them on Amazon and
that's great.
all the bookstores.
Well, Judith, thank you so much for being a shining example and paving the way for the rest of us in the work you're doing. And thanks so much for being on the show.
Yes.
Thanks all of you guys for yeah, we got to get it out there. Thanks all of you guys for tuning into this amazing conversation. If you want to find me, you can find me at lisacampion.com. I work with emerging psychics, healers, and empaths to help them fully step into their gifts, because I sure do love training other psychics. And thanks for tuning into this podcast. We're so happy to have you here on The Miracle of Healing, where we are saving the planet one person at a time right here on the Empower channel.